Take a look at the device in your hand. It feels solid, personal, almost permanent. But its very existence is a miracle, a product of a fragile global system that is, right now, being deliberately dismantled. Beneath the smooth glass and cold aluminum lies a tiny sliver of silicon, etched with patterns smaller than a virus. This is the atom of our century. It's the fundamental building block of everything you consider modern life. Without it, your bank account vanishes. Your car becomes a ton of inert metal. Your smartphone turns into a useless glass brick. In 2026, we have officially entered the era of the silicon siege. While the public is distracted by the loud theater of politics and the constant noise of social media, the real war is being fought in silence. A war for the only resource that truly matters: high-end compute. We are being pushed from an era of incredible technological abundance into a planned era of technological scarcity. In this documentary, we are going to deconstruct the invisible walls being built around the global supply chain. We will explore how the system is engineering a chokehold on intelligence to ensure that by the end of this decade, advanced technology is no longer a human right, but a controlled privilege. Welcome to the deepest layer of the machine. This is how systems work. To understand this siege, you have to understand that our entire digital world hangs by a single, microscopic thread, a thread that leads back to a small town in the Netherlands called Veldhoven. Most people think tech is decentralized. They hear Silicon Valley and think that's where the magic happens. They are wrong. Silicon Valley is the designer. The Netherlands is the gatekeeper. We're talking about a company called ASML and its EUV, or extreme ultraviolet lithography machines. These aren't just tools. They are the most complex machines ever created by humankind. Each one is the size of a city bus, costs over $200 million, and is assembled from hundreds of thousands of components, sourced from a global network of 5,000 suppliers. But here is the systemic flaw. ASML is the only company on Earth that can build them. The system has engineered a total monopoly. If you want to build a computer chip that can run the AI of 2026, you absolutely must use an ASML machine. There is no plan B, there is no competitor. This is a classic case of first-mover lock-in. The architects of this system have ensured that the barrier to entry is impossibly high. It requires decades of specialized physics and billions in research and development, making it impossible for any rival to emerge. This is the technical stranglehold. By controlling the production of the machines that make the chips, the system controls the absolute ceiling of human progress. We saw the first shots of the siege back in 2024 and 2025, when export bans, justified by security concerns, prevented these machines from reaching certain parts of the world. By deciding who gets the machines, the architects are deciding which nations will enter the 2030s with intelligence, and which will be left behind in the dark. If ASML is the gatekeeper, then our next stop, TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, is the forge. We now shift our focus to a small island in the Pacific that produces over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. This is what's known as the Silicon Shield, and it represents a massive systemic paradox. The entire global economy, worth nearly $100 trillion, is completely dependent on a few square miles of high-tech factories. Factories that happen to be sitting on a major tectonic fault line in the middle of a geopolitical flashpoint. So, why did the architects of the system allow this? Why centralize the world's most critical resource in the most dangerous place on Earth? The answer is simple. The system always prioritizes efficiency over resilience. The just-in-time manufacturing model maximizes profit and control. But in 2026, that incredible efficiency has become a weapon. Just think about the blockade scenario. If the flow of chips from Taiwan is interrupted for just 3 weeks, the global GDP would collapse by an estimated 10 to 15%. This isn't a recession. It's a civilizational reset. We've all heard about the reshoring attempts, the billions being poured into new factories in places like Arizona and Germany. But here's the secret the system won't tell you. These new factories are already obsolete before they even finish construction. They are always designed to be one step behind the cutting-edge technology being used in Taiwan. The hierarchy is maintained. The center remains the center. The siege ensures that even as we desperately try to decentralize, the master keys to the entire system stay in the same very few hands. In the old world, power was measured in barrels of oil and reserves of gold. In 2026, power is measured in TFLOPS, teraflops of computing power. Compute is the new gold standard. We are witnessing the rise of the GPU hegemony. Companies like Nvidia have transformed from being simple graphics card manufacturers to being the central banks of intelligence itself. When a nation buys 10,000 H100 or B200 GPU clusters, they aren't just buying hardware. They are buying the ability to simulate reality, to crack any encryption, and to automate their entire military-industrial complex. This creates a stark compute divide. The system is now quietly implementing a kind of credit score for nations, based entirely on their access to processing power. If a country deviates from the global consensus, they don't just face old-fashioned trade sanctions. They face compute throttling. Their data centers are cut off from critical updates. Their hardware can be remotely bricked, and their ability to innovate is simply deleted from the network. And we're seeing this get even more consolidated through the energy compute feedback loop. High-end AI chips require absolutely massive amounts of electricity. So now, in 2026, we see the merging of big tech and nuclear energy. The system is creating sovereign compute zones, fortresses of data and power where the rules of the old world no longer apply. If you're inside one of these zones, you're part of the future. As the siege tightens, the focus shifts from the producers to you, the consumer. This is where it gets personal. The system is moving us away from the ownership model and into a permanent access model. In 2026, your hardware is no longer truly yours. It's just a provisioned node on a network you don't control. We're seeing the rise of the silicon kill switch. Modern chips are now designed with a hardware-level root of trust that connects directly to the manufacturer's servers. If the system decides your device is insecure, or if you've bypassed a regulation, the silicon itself can be instructed to degrade its own performance or stop functioning entirely. This creates a software-hardware lock. We are watching the death of the second-hand market. You can't sell your old tech if the system simply refuses to re-verify the new owner. The scarcity of new chips is being used as the perfect excuse to force everyone into this new, managed ecosystem. We just don't have enough chips for everyone, they say, so we have to prioritize those who follow the protocol. The siege isn't about a shortage of sand, it's about a surplus of control. The silicon siege is reaching its zenith. The digital cage is being built with the most advanced materials known to man. But every system, no matter how powerful, has a shadow. People are rediscovering the value of offline systems, of mechanical tools, and of local unmonitored networks. The grid is closing, and the chips are being counted. But the system can only control what it can track. In the era of the Silicon Siege, the most revolutionary act you can perform is to remain unpredictable. While you've been told the tension between East and West is about ideology or borders, the reality is far more binary. It's a war of ones and zeros. Welcome to 2026, where the Iron Curtain has been replaced by the Silicon Curtain. This new Cold War isn't fought with tanks, but with something called the Entity List Strategy. The system has weaponized the very architecture of the Internet. Think about it. By banning specific companies from accessing essential software, like electronic design automation tools, the architects are effectively lobotomizing the competition. If you can't access the software used to design the chips, you can't build the hardware. It's a digital blockade, more effective and silent than any naval fleet. It's a siege on innovation itself. But every siege invites a counter-siege. And this is where the rare earth retaliation comes in. China controls the global processing of gallium, germanium, and graphite. These aren't just obscure elements on the periodic table. They are the raw ingredients of the entire semiconductor world. So, as the US blocks the brain of the operation, the chip design China is beginning to choke the China nervous system, the essential materials needed to make anything at all. We're diving deep into the world of compute smuggling. These operations are sophisticated, well-funded, and incredibly risky. This leads us to the shadow clusters. These are decentralized AI training grounds that operate completely outside the global compliance system. They are the rogue states of the digital world. And the architects of the system are terrified of this. Why? Because an unregulated AI is an unpredictable system. It's an intelligence that hasn't been sanitized, that hasn't been aligned with the approved narratives. It's a digital free thinker. And that's the most dangerous thing imaginable to a system built on control. So how do they fight this? In 2026, the information police are no longer searching for illegal texts or banned books. They're hunting for illegal heat signatures. The telltale sign of a rogue AI being trained is a massive, unexplained spike in power consumption. A sudden, intense energy draw in an unauthorized area is the modern-day equivalent of a pirate radio broadcast. This has given rise to power grid surveillance. Your electricity usage, the data from your smart meter, is no longer just for billing. It's becoming a tool for the state to ensure you aren't running unauthorized compute power in your own home. The siege isn't just at the border anymore. It's moving into your basement. Let's project forward to the immediate future, to 2027. This architecture of scarcity isn't a temporary glitch. It's being designed as a permanent feature of our world. By 2027, the system is set to implement the tiered internet. You might be familiar with debates around net neutrality today, where all data is treated equally. Well, the future is about hardware neutrality. If your device doesn't have a certified, system-approved, secure element chip inside it, you'll be relegated to the legacy web. This will be a slow, restricted, and dangerously insecure version of the Internet you know today. It's a digital caste system, determined by the hardware you can afford or are permitted to own, and it gets more direct. We're looking at the very real possibility of silicon rationing cards. Imagine needing a government-issued permit just to buy a high-performance laptop, a powerful graphics card, or a server for your small business. This is the ultimate goal of the siege, to crush the democratization of high-level intelligence. The system wants to guarantee that the tools capable of truly challenging the status quo, things like advanced cryptography, deep-level simulations, and autonomous agents, are kept strictly within the hands of the approved nodes. It's about maintaining a monopoly on the future itself. So what does this all mean? The silicon siege is the final brick being laid in our digital prison wall. We've rebuilt a civilization that is entirely dependent on a resource that 99% of the population does not understand and cannot produce. We have willingly traded the autonomy of the analog world for the convenience of a silicon master. We've accepted the terms and conditions without reading the fine print. But, as we conclude this investigation, it's as crucial to remember the fundamental rule of any complex system. Its complexity is also its greatest weakness. The more the architects centralize the production of intelligence, the more fragile their empire becomes. Think about it. A single earthquake in Taiwan could cripple the world's supply of advanced chips. One factory fire in the Netherlands could halt the production of the machines that make the chips. Or, perhaps most powerfully, one breakthrough in decentralized, low-tech computing could shatter the entire siege overnight. The system wants you to believe that this future is inevitable, that this path is already set in stone. It is not. The future is always a choice. It's a choice between a managed, predictable simulation and a messy, chaotic, but autonomous reality. The siege is here. The digital lines have been drawn. And now, you know how the system works. Thank you for watching this deep dive. If you value this kind of analysis that looks beyond the headlines, please subscribe and share this video. Share it before the algorithm decides it's unauthorized compute. Stay awake and know when to stay offline. This is how systems work. We're hitting a wall. The silicon siege is reaching its physical limits. Transistors can't get any smaller without defying the laws of quantum physics. So, what's next? The system is already planning its next move. What we're calling the post-silicon architecture. Starting around 2026, we see a massive shift in investment, away from traditional silicon and into biocomputing and DNA data storage. Think about it. Why the change? Silicon is easy to spot. A server farm, a factory, a device in your hand, they all have a physical footprint. But biology is everywhere. This leads us to the synthetic intelligence system. The goal is no longer to have the grid live on a device in your pocket, but to embed it into the very environment around you. We've uncovered patents for molecular computing, a revolutionary technology that doesn't need giant Dutch machines or massive Taiwanese factories to operate. It can be created anywhere. This is the ultimate evolution of the siege. If the system can move computing power into biological or ambient materials, the off switch is no longer a button on a server. The off switch becomes the environment itself. And how will this be sold to us? As green tech, as sustainable intelligence. It will be marketed as the solution to silicon's environmental impact. But, in reality, It's the final step in making the grid inescapable. The silicon era was the test run. The synthetic era is the full implementation. Now let's talk about the final stages of the siege as we know it. The system is rolling out what's called zero trust hardware. It used to be simple. You bought a computer and it was yours. You controlled it. But in the era of zero trust, that's no longer the case. The hardware root of trust means the processor inside your device is no longer loyal to you. It constantly attests its integrity, its status, back to a central authority. We've analyzed the remote attestation protocol, and it's chilling. If your chip detects that you've modified your operating system, or tried to run unencrypted code, anything the system doesn't approve of, it simply refuses to decrypt your data. Your files, your photos, your entire digital life becomes inaccessible. The system has weaponized your own hardware, turning it into a spy that works against you. And it gets deeper. Inside modern CPUs are secure enclaves. These are black boxes of code, completely sealed off. Even you, the owner of the computer, are technically and legally forbidden from seeing what's inside or how it operates. This is the foundation of the black box society, where we are forced to rely on technology we cannot understand or verify. The siege is no longer just about controlling factories or supply lines. It has moved from the outside world to the very electrons flowing inside your devices. But here's the crucial part. Every system, no matter how complex, has a breaking point. The more centralized and intricate the silicon siege becomes, the more it suffers from what experts call systemic brittleness. We've run the models on a cascading failure scenario, because the global supply chain is now so tightly integrated, so dependent on a few key choke points, a single error can bring it all down. One bad software update pushed to every device, one successful cyber attack on a single lithography center in the Netherlands, could trigger a digital dark age. This reveals the central paradox for the architects of the siege. In their relentless quest for total control, they have built a system so fragile, so complex, that it cannot survive a single, unforeseen event. A house of cards, built on a planetary scale, and this fragility is creating an opportunity. We're seeing the rise of off-grid compute movements. These are communities, pioneers, who are deliberately stepping outside the system. They're using 1990s-era hardware, simple and robust. They're embracing risk-free open-source architectures that aren't controlled by any single corporation. They're building local mesh networks to communicate without touching the global grid. These digital maroons are creating a parallel reality. They understand a fundamental truth. While the high-end, lockdown silicon is faster, the low-end, independent silicon is freer. The real battle on the horizon isn't about who has the most processing power, but about who has sovereign processing power. We've traveled on an incredible journey together. From the sterile clean rooms of ASML in the Netherlands to the high-stakes boardrooms of Silicon Valley, and into the shadow economy of the black market. The Silicon Siege is, without a doubt, the most ambitious control project in human history, an attempt to track, manage, and monetize every spark of intelligence on this planet. But as we have seen, this system is not a god. It is a machine made of sand, light, and electricity. And like any machine, it has requirements. It needs your participation. It needs your data. It needs your compliance to function. The moment you begin to understand the architecture of the siege, how it's built, where its weaknesses lie, the walls that seemed so solid start to look fragile. They start to look like what they truly are. You are not just a node in their network. You are not just a data point to be analyzed. You are the architect of your own understanding. The grid is closing, but the exit remains open for those who know where to look. Thank you for watching. As the silicon siege tightens its grip, a new power is rising, one not made of flesh and blood, but of code and electricity. Welcome to the era of the algorithmic sovereign. In the past, laws were written by people and enforced by institutions. But now, in 2026, the law is written in code, and the silicon itself is the enforcer. This is what we call self-executing governance. Let's say you try to access information the system considers volatile. The architects of this new world have made a chilling discovery. They don't need to convince you of a lie if they can just filter the truth out of existence at the hardware level before it ever reaches your screen. We've uncovered patents for something called cognitive throttling. It's as direct as it sounds. The speed of your processor, the very pace of your digital life, is tied to your compliance score. The faster you obey, the faster your world moves. Lag isn't a technical glitch anymore. It's a social control mechanism. The ghost in the machine isn't a ghost at all. It's the warden. But this digital siege has a very real, physical cost. Energy, a staggering amount of it. This brings us to the thermodynamic tax. The high-end computing power that runs this entire system demands more electricity than our grids can sustainably provide. So, we're entering an age of energy rationing for data. And the tech giants? They're not waiting for the public grid to catch up. They're building their own private, small modular nuclear reactors, or SMRs. You have the compute-rich, living in constantly energized zones, surrounded by high-speed intelligence. And then you have the compute-poor, relegated to the brownout zones, where technology is slow, intermittent, and feels like a relic from a forgotten time. At its core, the silicon siege is a massive redistribution of the very energy that powers civilization. If you control the chips, you control the light itself. But no system, no matter how sophisticated, is perfect. The more the high-tech cage tries to control every variable, the more it disconnects from the messy, unpredictable reality of human biology and spirit. And a resistance is growing. We're seeing what's being called the Great Resignation from the grid. People are choosing to disconnect. Dark nodes are emerging, independent networks built on recycled, air-gapped hardware that the system has forgotten. Hardware it can't see or control. Engineers, thinkers, and everyday people are turning back to physical libraries, to handwritten ledgers, to mechanical tools that can't be remotely disabled or deep. This is asymmetric resistance. The architects prepared for a digital war, a battle of code and processing power. They were not prepared for a world that simply stops using their silicon. A $10 mechanical radio or a hand-cranked printing press can become more powerful than a $1 million server when that server is a spy. The moment you disconnect, you become an invisible variable, a ghost in their machine. So, let's bring it all together. We've journeyed from the high-tech machinery in the Netherlands to the foundries in Taiwan. from the Arctic server farms to the kill switches built into the phone in your pocket. But here's the truth. Every empire built on a single point of failure is destined to collapse. Whether that weak point is a specific type of sand, a single lithography machine, or the compliance of an entire population, it's a vulnerability. The architects believe they have captured the future, that they have programmed the final outcome of history. They are wrong. This vast system is a tool, and any tool can be dropped. The grid is a cage, but its doors are made of code, and code can always be rewritten. As we end this investigation, the question is no longer, how does the system work? We've shown you that. The real question is, how long will you choose to remain a part of it? The siege is real. The scarcity is planned. But your intelligence, your true human intelligence, remains yours to keep. This concludes our special documentary series. This has been a production of How Systems Work. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your resistance. Subscribe to the channel to stay informed on the invisible structures of 2026. Secure your data. Protect your mind. Good night.